In this module, we are going to talk about lean metrics. First, we'll cover categories of metrics. Then, we'll talk about alignment of metrics and offer an example. And finally, we'll talk about the guidelines for metric development. The categories of metrics with which lean folks might be most familiar are safety, quality, delivery, and cost. These are the classic categories of metrics at Toyota manufacturing plants. But what about service-based organizations? Should everyone be using the same categories? No, certainly not. It is important for an organization to create the categories based on its values and business model. In this example, we are using the following 5 dimensions. First, human development. This category might also simply be called people. This category is all about metrics at each level that relate to the people side of the business. For example, improving employee engagement. How might we measure that? Here are some examples of human development metrics at a high level and at a departmental level. At a high level, we might have employee turnover. If turnover is high, that indicates dissatisfaction. But what might we measure at a departmental level? We might measure training hours or absenteeism, which is also an indicator of satisfaction. And we might measure turnover at the departmental level. Things like skill development might also be measured. How much training did each team member receive on average? How many new skills did they develop per year on average? You might be able to think of others. How about service? Human development is about staff members, while service is all about the customer. How well did we meet our customer needs? On-time delivery of service, customer satisfaction levels from feedback, and other similar metrics might be used at a high level and even at the department level to measure service. Turnaround time of each major service or value stream to the customer is an excellent metric here as well. For example, for our health insurance plan client, we measured the turnaround time for processing claims in the claims department. Next is quality. Remember that a key pillar of the Toyota production system is quality at the source. This means that we never knowingly want to pass defective product or information to our next downstream customer. How do we measure quality to the customer at each level? At a high level, we might look at customer complaint rate or customer return rate overall. When we get down to the departmental level, we might measure the number of failures in terms of a particular department. For example, if we are processing insurance claims, we might measure the rate at which these are processed right the first time. Now, let's talk about cost. When we talk about cost in this context, we are typically talking about productivity. How can we get more value out of processes with the same or fewer resources? At the highest level, a typical metric is sales dollars per employee. If sales dollars is not the right metric, then it might be the total number of members or subscribers served per employee. Here are a few productivity metrics we used at an insurance plan client of ours. In the member outreach team, we measured the number of contacts made to members per team member. In a claims processing department, we measured the number of claims processed per hour and per day. In utilization management, we measured the number of authorizations processed per hour and per day. Finally, we come to growth. Growth is usually about revenue and market share. How does an organization grow? It increases the number of customers it has, or it increases the amount of sales it does with each customer. Typically, growth is measured in revenue dollars or number of members or subscribers, and more is better. This typically means that we want more market share. So, market share of appropriate markets could also be a high-level metric. Once we get down into the departments, we want to grow capacity, so that kind of goes back to some of our other categories. For example, if we can be more productive in each department, we can grow market share without adding resources. Now let's talk about alignment of metrics. Very often companies develop metrics at each level of an organization without thinking about alignment. They might use the key categories and develop metrics in each department, process, and even at the highest level, but these are not aligned. What do I mean by alignment? When you look at a metric at the frontline process level, it should affect the metric above it, and so on up to the top. Let's look at a simple example at ABC Health Plan. We're going to look at alignment for one category of metric, productivity or cost. At the organization level, we might be measuring total revenue dollars managed per staff member. This measures productivity because as we grow our revenue, if we grow our staff at a slower rate, we'll increase this number. That means we have more capacity as a result of more productivity. At the value stream level, let's call it provider services. This value stream handles activities related to healthcare providers. We will track the number of providers per staff in this value stream. This is a similar productivity metric. Now, when we get down to the process level, let's look at one key process, and that will be claims processing. We will track the number of claims processed per day. We might also track hourly claims processed per staff member. Now, to check our work, if we can process more claims per day or per hour, we would typically be able to have more providers per staff, which would ultimately mean we can manage more dollars per staff overall. Now it's your turn to start brainstorming some examples of metrics that make sense for your process. But, before I leave you, allow me to refresh your memory about some key guidelines for developing performance metrics. Firstly, performance metrics must support the company's strategy. Why measure something that doesn't ultimately affect high-level company goals? Next, they must be few in number. Don't track too many things, only critical things that will affect high-level goals. Next, they should be mostly non-financial. The day-to-day activities that result in success or failure cannot be measured using financials. People must be able to relate their work to the metric. Next, metrics must be simple and easy to understand. They must measure actual results versus goals so that we can see if there is a gap in performance. They must measure processes rather than people. And, finally, they must be timely and visual. If they are reported timely and visually, we can take action to improve. So there you have it. I encourage you to take the categories discussed in this video or your own organization's categories and examine the metrics you are currently using. Do they make sense? Are they aligned? Do they meet the criteria we just discussed?